Imagine a world without cities, without written laws, without the food we eat every day. It sounds like science fiction, right? Yet it is not so distant in time, and it is precisely there that the deep roots of our civilization lie. Today we will take an incredible journey, a leap back thousands of years. We will return to that era when humanity took its first steps out of the caves, learned to tame the earth, and built empires whose legacy still leaves us speechless today. Get ready, because we're about to challenge much of what we think we know about the birth of the modern world, exploring the radical transformations that have shaped our present. There was a time before history books, before documents, before any written record, an era that saw humanity embark on its most fascinating journey. This is not a simple tale of dates and names, but the epic narrative of how we became what we are. It is the period before written history, an era marked by changes so profound that they literally shaped our world. We are talking about an evolution that does not only concern tools or habitat, but the very structure of our society, our way of living, thinking, and interacting. Understanding these origins means understanding ourselves better, our institutions, our most deeply rooted habits. It is a journey that brings us face to face with the challenges and insights of our ancestors who, with limited resources, laid the foundations for everything that came after. Imagine for a moment living 10,000 years ago. You are hunters and gatherers. Every day is a struggle for survival. You are constantly on the move, following animals, searching for berries, roots, and fruit. You have no permanent home, only temporary shelters. Your life is a continuous cycle of seeking and moving. This was the reality for the vast majority of human existence. Then, about 10,000 years ago, something changed. It wasn't a single event, but a long, gradual process that radically altered the destiny of humanity. This is what we call the Neolithic Revolution, an epochal turning point that marked the transition from a nomadic lifestyle based on hunting and gathering to a sedentary one founded on the practice of agriculture. This seemingly simple innovation was actually fundamental. By allowing communities to settle in one place and cultivate the land, it enabled more stable and predictable food production. No longer dependent on the randomness of hunting or the seasonality of wild gathering, humans could now plan, store, and sustain larger communities. It was a slow but inexorable change. The first agricultural experiments, perhaps haphazard, transformed into refined techniques, with the selection of the best seeds and the development of rudimentary but effective agricultural tools. The consequences of this sedentarization were enormous and affected every aspect of human life. First and foremost, population growth. With a more reliable food source, populations could increase. Fewer people starved to death, and children were more likely to survive. This led to larger and more complex settlements. Secondly, the specialization of labor. When not everyone had to devote themselves to foraging, some could start doing other things, building better houses, creating tools, working with fabrics, even developing primitive forms of craftsmanship. This division of labor was the seed from which the first forms of complex societies would sprout, and then the birth of cities. These urban agglomerations were not just a collection of houses, they were true centers of trade, where goods were exchanged, centers of culture, where traditions were passed down and innovations shared, and crucially, centers of power, where the first forms of political and social organization developed. The first cities represented a fundamental step towards the social and political complexity we know today. They were microcosms of a new world in the making, with their own hierarchies, problems, and innovative solutions. Not only did they provide protection and resources, but they also encouraged the meeting of ideas, the sharing of knowledge, and the development of new technologies, creating a virtuous circle of progress. If the Neolithic Revolution planted the seeds of civilization, Mesopotamia was the fertile ground where the first magnificent flowers sprouted. Known as the land between the rivers and the Tigris and Euphrates. This region of the Middle East has been the cradle of some of the earliest and most influential civilizations in history. Its strategic location, with rivers providing water for irrigation and communication routes, made it an ideal place for agricultural and urban development. Here, in a relatively short space of time, peoples and cultures emerged that would leave an indelible mark on humanity, inventing concepts and systems that we still use today. Among the first to prosper in Mesopotamia were the Sumerians. They did not establish a unified empire, but rather a series of independent city-states, each with its own ruler and deities. Cities like Ur, Uruk, and Lagash became vibrant centers of life, trade, and innovation. But perhaps the most revolutionary contribution of the Sumerians was the development of cuneiform writing. Imagine not having a way to record your thoughts, your business transactions, your laws. All information had to be memorized or passed down orally, with the risk of being lost or distorted. Cuneiform writing, inscribed on clay tablets, changed all that. It was a revolutionary communication system that allowed for recording information, passing on knowledge, managing vast territories, and even telling epic stories like that of Gilgamesh. This was the true beginning of history as we know it, a transition from prehistory to history. Over time, other powers emerged in Mesopotamia. Around 2334 BC, the Akkadians, under the leadership of Sargon the Great, achieved an unprecedented feat, the unification of Mesopotamia. They created the first empire in history, unifying the various Sumerian city-states under a single crown. This demonstrated the possibility of governing vast territories and diverse populations, a model that would be emulated by countless empires to come. The Akkadian Empire, though relatively short-lived, set an important precedent for large-scale political and military organization. But perhaps of all the Mesopotamian civilizations, the Babylonians are those who have left the most indelible mark on the collective imagination, largely thanks to one of the most famous legal works in history, the Code of Hammurabi. King Hammurabi, who reigned circa 1792-1750 BC, was not only a skilled leader but also a visionary lawgiver. His code, carved on a diorite stele over 2 meters high and placed in public places for all to see, was a set of laws that covered every aspect of Babylonian life, from trade to family, from agriculture to criminal justice. It was a remarkable example of social and legal organization, and an attempt to establish a clear and predictable order in a rapidly changing society. The Code of Hammurabi is characterized by severe punishments, often summarized in the phrase an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, although its application depended on the social status of those involved. For example, an injury inflicted on a nobleman carried a more severe punishment than the same injury inflicted on a common citizen or a slave. This not only reflected the complexity of Babylonian society with its distinct social classes, but also offered an incredibly detailed insight into daily life at the time. Through these laws, we can glimpse the concerns, values, and social structures of a people who lived thousands of years ago. It was a monumental attempt to create a universal codified legal system, an idea that still underpins our modern legal systems today. The Code of Hammurabi was not just a legal document, but a veritable manifesto of civilization, demonstrating a profound understanding of the necessity of order and justice for the prosperity of a society. Almost simultaneously with the development of the Mesopotamian civilizations along the banks of another great river, the Nile, an equally fascinating civilization flourished, destined to last for millennia, ancient Egypt. If Mesopotamia was a land of city-states and empires constantly vying for supremacy, Egypt was a unified kingdom, ruled by a central figure who embodied divine and temporal power. Egyptian society was a theocratic society, deeply permeated by religion and spirituality. At the top of this social pyramid was the pharaoh, not just a king, but considered a true living god whose authority was absolute and unchallenged. The pharaoh was the mediator between men and the gods, guarantor of cosmic order and the prosperity of the kingdom. This link between political and divine power was so strong that Egypt's well-being was believed to depend directly on his presence. The Egyptian economy was inextricably linked to the Nile River. Every year, with almost divine precision, its floods inundated the surrounding lands, depositing a fertile silt that made the soil incredibly productive. Without the Nile, Egypt would have been an uninhabitable desert. Thanks to these annual floods, the Egyptians could grow grains, such as wheat and barley, in quantities sufficient to support a large population and even generate surpluses for trade. The Nile was not only a source of agricultural life but also the main route of communication and transport, a river highway that united the kingdom. The organization of hydraulic works, such as canals and dams, was fundamental and required a complex administrative structure and a deep knowledge of natural cycles. But what is perhaps most striking about ancient Egypt and what has guaranteed its eternal fame is its monumental architecture. Renowned for its grandeur and sophistication, Egyptian architecture is a testament to the engineering prowess and profound spirituality of the people. The pyramids, particularly the Great Pyramid of Giza, are among the wonders of the ancient world, constructions of a scale and precision that still astound people today. They were not just tombs but machines for eternity, designed to guard the bodies of the pharaohs and their riches for the afterlife. In addition to the pyramids, majestic temples, such as those at Karnak and Luxor, with their enormous columns and intricate hieroglyphics, were dedicated to the worship of the gods and the celebration of the pharaohs. Sphinxes, mythological creatures with the body of a lion and the head of a human, guarded these sacred places, symbols of power and mystery. These structures were not only imposing, but were built with advanced techniques for the time, using precise calculations, astronomical knowledge, and large-scale work organization. Each block of stone, each decoration had a profound meaning, often linked to religion, the cycle of life and death, and the continuity of the kingdom. Egyptian architecture, then, was not just a demonstration of strength and skill, but a true expression of their cosmology, their belief in eternity, and their desire to leave an indelible mark on time. Even today, walking among the ruins of these monuments is like taking a journey back in time, an experience that connects you directly with the greatness of a civilization that dominated for millennia. We have traveled through millennia of history, from the bold Neolithic revolution that made us sedentary, to the birth of the first cities, to the Mesopotamian empires and the wonders of ancient Egypt. We have seen how human ingenuity and necessity and spirituality have shaped the foundations of our world. These are not just chapters in ancient books, but the beginnings of our own history. Understanding these origins is fundamental to understanding who we are and where we are going.